Great effort, good job. Well, that's the kind of reaction we've been seeing following in the Indian women's cricket team's exit from the 2022 Women's ODI World Cup. But why? What is so great about a team that was the finalist in the last two ICC events, the ODI World Cup and the T20 World Cup? What's so great about them getting knocked out in the group stage? Now, these are not children that you need to bubble wrap and protect. These are some of the best female cricketers in the country, some even in the world. And they deserve the respect of your criticism when it's due. Winning just 3 matches out of 7 is just not good enough for a team that has legends like Jhulan Goswami, Mithali Raj, and players like Harmanpreet Kaur, Smriti Mandhana, Shefali Verma, Deepti Sharma. And while getting knocked out in the group stage is just not good enough. Unless, of course, you consider the fact that this team is managed by the BCCI and had just 1 year to prepare for a World Cup that actually came after 5 whole years. So, well, the T20 World Cup, I mentioned a little while back that India reached the final of in 2020, a match that had record viewership. Well, after that final in 2020, the BCCI chose to simply forget the existence of the Indian women's cricket team for almost an entire 365 days. There was not a single match scheduled for these women, but of course social media is a powerful medium, and enough noise was made and the board finally had to get the act together. And in March of 2021, an entire year later, they finally got the Indian women's cricket team back on the field in a home series against South Africa. Since then, the women's team has played 16 ODIs in the run-up to the World Cup this year. They started with a 4-1 loss to South Africa at home, then a 2-1 loss to England in England, then a 2-1 loss to Australia in Australia, and a 4-1 defeat to New Zealand at their home right before the World Cup. So while these 16 ODIs in 1 year were not enough to prepare the Indian women's cricket team for the World Cup that was this year, the more concerning question that now arises is how is it that we think it will be enough to find the next gen of Indian cricketers for the dressing room. Mithali Raj and Jhulan Goswami are two absolute legends in the Indian dressing room, but also they're both 39 and at the end of their careers. They both haven't been part of the Indian T20 setup for quite a while. So there is a need for a transition in the team and also in the leadership over the next few months. Harmanpreet Kaur, of course, has been a favourite to take over as the captain, and with the growing noise about it, with experts talking about how the need is for Harmanpreet to now take over the captaincy, that is a switch that could be made anytime soon. But then there are also other concerns in the lineup that need to be addressed. While India played with as many as 8 batters in their 11 during the ODI World Cup, the batting changes may not be such a big concern, especially with Harmanpreet Kaur, Smriti Mandhana, Shefali Verma all part of that lineup. But with Jhulan Goswami being the complete bowling mainstay for India, finding her able replacement and finding a way to figure out India's best bowling attack is a concern that needs to be addressed. And this is where we come to the interesting bit. How do we address this question of replacements? Do we just rely on the occasional domestic tournaments that the BCCI has had for women's cricket? Or do we do what has actively worked for the men's cricket setup, and that is to also introduce an IPL? Following the IPL's governing council meeting in March this year, board president Saurav Ganguly did say that all efforts are being made to get together a 6-team women's IPL from the 2023 season. Considering there was a World Cup this year, this would have been a good time to do that, but anyway, nobody's really arguing with that. They are considering a 6-team women's IPL from 2023, but since we've also heard such noises and such quotes before promising a women's IPL, let's see if it actually does materialize, because if it does, it answers almost all questions for India. With the T20 World Cup coming up, a T20 tournament that has all players from across the world will be such a great way for India to not only find replacements and not only find more new talent, it will also be a way to expose young Indian talent to overseas stars, and the effect that we've seen in the men's game could translate in the women's game as well. In the end, it may just come down to profits, and if the BCCI is able to make enough money from the women's IPL, but of course we do know the coffers of the board are quite full, so this should not possibly be a question of profits, but about just taking the game forward. And that should be the main reason that the BCCI do pursue this women's IPL and actually give us this tournament in at least the 2023 season.